Today's topic is just about building responsible and engaged citizens. Um, oops, to get through. So we're just going to talk about a couple of different topics today. Of course, we'll do the intro again as to who I am, as well as Sergeant Centeno. What does it mean when we're talking about an engaged and responsible citizen? What does instilling responsibility look like, especially in our middle school aged kids? What teaching and demonstrating, as well as encouraging engagement, also looks like? Some practical strategies for parents, understanding police encounters, and then emotional literacy and emotional intelligence. So again, just a little introduction again. I am Gia Black. I am one of the middle school counselors here at Ford Middle School. I have been a counselor for about 11 years, a school counselor for about 11 years, but I am loving my year here at Ford. And then of course there's Sergeant Centeno, who was a former SRO and is currently the patrol sergeant. So what does it mean to be a responsible, engaged citizen? We're really looking at 4 different categories when we're talking about understanding responsibility. We're looking from a personal aspect, an academic, a social, and a civic. So personally, it's someone who is taking ownership of one's actions, choices, well-being, and is having a disciplined and accountable life. What that would look like in our middle school aged kids is just that resisting of peer pressure, those reevaluating of goals and habits. It's accepting consequences, whether they're good or bad, accepting consequences for action, time management. All of those are examples of personal ways that a student can be responsible. Academically, again, that's having ownership in learning. It is kind of defined as being accountable for one's learnings through their work, through honesty, through putting forth the effort, through seeking help when needed. We have a lot of kids that are completing work but not turning it in. So having that academic ownership of this is my work, checking grades, sorry about that, communicating with teachers and staff, not taking shortcuts, not taking the easy route. From a social perspective, that's acting with kindness, respect, and awareness on how one's actions impact others in the relationships and community. And this is really understanding how our actions impact other, whether that's socially in person or online, because social responsibility does include a lot of that good digital citizenship. And then the civic responsibility, engaging in actions that contribute to the well-being of society, such as following laws, volunteering, and staying informed. Again, this is understanding and respecting laws and rules, whether they're in the community, whether they're in school, whether they're just family rules and community. And then as well as engaging in the community, that's also very important. And an example, if not necessarily in the community, but in a school setting, it could be something as simple as joining a club that can promote beautification, a club that can promote community service, recycling, anything like that, that kind of contributes to that civic responsibility. And then I will not talk as much about the engaged citizenship, but we will talk about that later on. And that looks like community involvement, awareness, and advocacy. We'll get into what that looks like later in the presentation. Some key traits that I want to point out of a responsible and engaged citizen, and these are really character traits that we want to instill in our students. Honesty, being truthful in words and actions, even when it's difficult. Accountability, taking ownership of one's actions and accepting the consequences, again, whether good or bad. Respect and fairness, treating others with kindness and equality, valuing different perspectives and rights. And empathy, understanding and sharing feelings of others and showing compassion and support. So now we're going to talk a little bit more as to what it looks like to instill responsibility in our students. we'll look at 4 different examples on how we can instill responsibility. The first one is modeling behavior. Students learn by example, and the examples we set of honesty, integrity, and accountability. And for a lot of this, it could be in our own reflections of how are we modeling our screen time? How are we modeling our digital citizenship? How are we modeling our communications with others? How are we having those challenging conversations? And even how are we modeling time management? So those are all different ways that we can model our behavior when we're saying, hey, this is the expectation. We need to get out of the house. We need to get ready. We need to get somewhere. How are we modeling how we prepare ourselves and kind of follow through with all of our different commitments? Teaching accountability, that's encouraging students to own their actions and apologize when necessary and correct mistakes. One of my favorite things to do that I've learned as a counselor, when I'm doing any kind of mediation or conflict resolution, the first thing that I ask a student after I've heard the story and I've heard both sides, and they always want to say it's the other person's fault. The first question that I ask them for accountability is, what's one thing that you're willing to take responsibility for? And that's always huge because it takes, and I accept whatever they offer, but it does take some ownership as to how they contributed to a situation. And like I said, a lot of times this is in regards to conflict resolution or mediation, but a lot of times they'll say, you know, I did do this. And then, okay, yeah. Now, in my head, I might be like, really? That's what you're going to take? There's some other things you could have taken responsibility for. But even if they're willing to accept the one thing of like, well, I did talk back. Okay. Well, then let's talk about that and how did that action affect another action? And so that's kind of always the example that I use when it comes to teaching accountability. It doesn't have to be all the things. It can just be one thing to teach that accountability and have that ownership for our actions. Household responsibility is another way to instill responsibility. That can be chores, time management, again, following through with commitment. Time management is really big with our students because that is really how what's essential for helping academically at a middle school level. In an elementary setting, a lot of times you can sit and do the work together. Middle school, it gets a lot more challenging. I can't do the work that these middle school students are doing, but I can help teach following through with commitments. I can help teach time management, meeting deadlines, turning in assignments, those kind of things. That is going to be more valuable to supporting your student academically in a middle school setting, because a lot of our kids, again, are doing the work, but they're not turning it in. So time management, commitments, things like that at home when you're saying, hey, if this is the due date, we need to follow through with the due date. And how can I help you with timers, with, time management? What can what environment can I help create for you that would be better? Those are all great ways to help with household responsibility. And then social and extracurricular involvement, encouraging participation in clubs, sports, and volunteer work. This really cultivates those key traits that I had mentioned before, that sense of accountability, respect and fairness. Again, time management, team building, a lot of those social aspects and a lot of those things can come together in the school and the extra involvement. Okay, and then teaching and demonstrating ethics in everyday life. So, processing decision-making skills, directly teaching students to think about consequences and moral implications. This is those times where we kind of have to sit in it with our kids and allow them to process what's happening. They, of course, cannot think as long term as us. So a lot of times, when I sit, I have to and talk to students. You have to sit from a perspective of, okay, let's go through your scenario. What do you think is going to happen? And follow through with those conversations and what consequences, good or bad, is going to come from those actions, and truly having the conversation. Because I think a lot of a lot of us will assume, oh, they know. Like, again, if you touch a hot stove, that's going to be hot, it's going to burn. But I think a lot of the long-term consequences is where they really need help with the because their development is not always there. And so, okay, if you touch a hot stove and you're going to burn, how are you going to heal? What's that going to do to your hand? Kind of asking those what's next questions and having those conversations. Some real life examples are the academic honesty and integrity. Again, even back to turning in assignments on time. What does that do to your grade to not turn in an assignment? And students are like, oh, it just gives me 10 points off. Okay, well, what are those 10 points? How are they going to affect you later on in the semester? They can't quite think of those things. When we talk about even students that are failing and in a position in December where it's like we need to bring those grades up for the second semester, you can tell that they can't quite conceptualize how their false grades have affected their spring grades. And so we kind of have to paint the picture and truly sit and do the math with them because they just don't have the long-term thinking to realize what I did in the fall, what I didn't take seriously is going to affect me in the spring, and therefore my actions in the spring need to be a little different. So a lot of that is really having those conversations, taking the time to connect a lot of those dots. Um, when we're talking about academic integrity, I'm also going to touch a little bit about responsible use of AI because our students are using that, and it's definitely a resource that they're tapping into, and it's a great resource. But we also need to teach how do you use that resource. Let's make sure, again, we're taking ownership for our own academics and not just relying on something that is easy and convenient and a shortcut. Um, Another real life example, just to pivot a little bit, of course, is respecting different perspectives. And then again, with the digital responsibility and social media behavior and online etiquette. And the social media behavior is huge. We're all attached to our phones, we're all attached to social media. It has a lot of really great benefits, but also having to teach. We're constantly doing lessons on make sure you think, is what I'm posting kind? Is what I'm posting helpful? Is what I'm posting, part of somebody else's permission? Do I have that? So making sure that we're having some honest conversations about what is being posted. As parents, are we monitoring what our students are posting and what they can see? That's a lot of our social media behavior and digital responsibility. And then just another example of demonstrating ethics in everyday life would be to encourage critical thinking through discussing current events and ethical dilemmas together. And it doesn't necessarily have to be current events. When I was thinking about current events at the time, I was like, well, what is there to talk about that's, with middle school kids and things like that. And I did not realize how controversial the Super Bowl performance was. And hearing that perspective from students and hearing what they're saying, I'm like, whoa. And just discussing it because I feel like there was definitely some generational gaps in this year's Super Bowl performance. And I did not quite understand all the dynamics going on, but asking someone, what's happening? What's this? What do you know about it? There was just a lot to be said, and there was a lot of really great conversation. Um, Even if it's not current events, you can also just ask about current lingo. Bruh, no cap, Riz. I'm not going to continue to embarrass myself, but there's so much in their lingo nowadays that having the conversation as to why a kid is like, what does that mean? What is he doing? Having that, it's a good way to understand their reasoning. It's also a really good way to understand how they're processing information. So again, just even bringing up current event issues, how are they processing information? Where are they getting their information from? Because a lot of them are getting their information from their peers. So being able to kind of remold some of that and talk through that and say, well, let's process that a little bit more. It's a great example on how we can do little things every day to help teach ethics and responsibility. And I think this is where I'm going to pass it on to my next presenter. This is about encouraging civic engagement and community involvement.
Perfect. Thanks, Gia. Do you mind clicking for me?
Sure.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so I'm the director of community services. Y'all know this, and I definitely do not know all the answers. I do have the opportunity to do some service work with my son. He is a 16-year-old, or as of today, he's a 16-year-old actually. And so he's in Youth Men's Service League, YMSL, and we've had some experiences with some charity opportunities. And so I thought that this would be a great opportunity to share some of these things with you guys. Again, I'm not an expert, but there have been some really great things that have been, very fulfilling for us here in the community. So I want to start off by talking about humanity, and it starts with charity. This conveys the idea that the foundation of being human, of having compassion and care and an understanding for others, begins with acts of giving and selflessness. I think that's hard. Selflessness, being selfless in today's world, and even before now, is a challenge. But this suggests that the essence of human connection and empathy in society itself is built upon the willingness to help those in need. And so by practicing this, whether it's by giving of your resources, your time, your kindness, we demonstrate our shared humanity. And it reflects our ability to look beyond ourselves, recognize the struggles and needs of others. And it's just that giving mentality, fostering a culture of kindness and empathy that binds people together. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay. So again, kind of highlighting what I just talked about: empathy, compassion, gratitude, building that social responsibility, fostering that selflessness and generosity. But then the really cool part too is fostering that community and connection. And so as you attend different events, opportunities to give, and you're connecting within that opportunity. And so that's a really great opportunity as well. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide highlights an opportunity to support our community through Tango Charities. My son and I do this almost every single month. It's a great opportunity to come together again with community members at Boomer Jacks here in Allen. It's the fourth Saturday of every month, and it's called Feed the City Allen. And so essentially what happens is all these people come together. We bring bread, meat, cheese, mustard, sandwich baggies, tangerines, and chips. And they have this amazing process where they have all the goods. You start first by making sandwiches. They teach you how to make a sandwich. You make the sandwich. Once we use all the bread, all the meat, all the cheese, we move on to tangerines, and we put 2 tangerines in a bag. And then once they go through all of those, we move on to chips. And so at the end of it, we have, usually 4,000 to 5,000 meals that they're then able to take to Dallas and provide to those who are in need. So awesome, easy opportunity. It takes about an hour and a half on Saturday. But it's forced my son and I to really think about, okay, we've really got it made. Like, we have this, and this. There are people out there who don't have all of these things. And so it fosters that feeling of empathy and just thinking outside yourself a little bit. Can we go to the next one? Meals on Wheels is another opportunity. I will say that Meals on Wheels mostly operates Monday through Friday. So this would be a great summer opportunity or a great day off sort of thing. So if we're off on a Monday for a long holiday weekend, or Tuesday, whatever, this would be great. There's plenty of opportunities, including driving. So you can put your whole family in the car and you can drive hot meals over to senior citizens in our community who don't have all the necessities that they need. It's awesome to see the smiles on these seniors' faces when you hop out with your little one. It just brightens their whole day. A, they're getting a warm meal. B, they're getting to connect with somebody that they may not normally get to, they don't may not have a lot of interaction. And so it's a very fulfilling opportunity. They also have opportunities to meal prep and package. And so all of the materials are there. They walk you through what to do. It's assembly line of prepping things to send out into the community. They're also doing spring boxes of hope, spring into action. You can donate spring boxes of hope filled with essentials for seniors. Drop-off dates are between February 2nd, April 8th. So we're in that window right now. And I'll share this presentation later, but you're able to actually click here to learn more. So it'll take you directly to the Meals on Wheels website. This is for pretty much all ages. Meals on Wheels, they don't allow anybody less than 11 years of age into the kitchen. But if you're doing the driving, anybody can go in the car. And going back to Tango Tabs, ages, anybody can attend. I've seen babies there before. So really, it's truly a family opportunity. Okay, next. Okay. I know many of you are probably familiar with ACO, Allen Community Outreach. They have a ton of volunteer opportunities here. Obviously, their mission is to help our neighbors prevent hunger and homelessness while working toward financial stability. Okay, and they have just grown so much over the past several years. I've lived in Allen for almost 15 years, and it started off really small, and it's grown to something really huge and very, very awesome opportunity for our community. They have a lot of volunteer opportunities. Like I said, you can work in the resale store. They have donation intake, food pantry, care center, seasonal jobs, and then the front desk. And so you can see the age groups that are there. But pretty much most of everything except for the care center and the front desk are for those middle school age, high school age kids. Great opportunity there. And you can work from an hour and a half or more with their volunteer opportunities. I'm sorry, if you click on it, it does take you to their website too. Yep, next slide. Okay. Also, the Allen Public Library for age 13 and up, they also host teen volunteers, and they have storytime aides who assist librarians during weekly story times. They use puppets, Prep for Crafts, Mirror the Librarian to help children follow along. And so this is actually an application process. So if your child is if they're interested in supporting our Allen Public Library, it looks like the application period starts on April 7th and goes through Sunday, April 20th. And then they'll be notified of the status by Thursday, May 1st. It sounds like this is a great opportunity for those avid readers, kids who like to connect with younger kids, and just really looking for an opportunity to give back. There's also an opportunity I found on Parks and Rec. They're seeking some energetic and dedicated individuals to serve a wide range of volunteer roles. I love that it shows the breakdown. It looks like we also have a youth team, students in grades 6 through 10. They're looking to find out what are our kids interested in and how can we as a community adapt to meet their needs. And so it's a great opportunity for kids to have a voice within the city of Allen. There's always an opportunity to keep Allen beautiful. They have several different programs. They have a litter cleanup program, which sounds pretty easy to adopt. If you decide that that's something that you want to do with a group, you can host it every single month. You can host it once a month, once and then not do it again. It's completely up to your schedule and what you want to do. Earth Fest is going to happen at the STEAM Center. That's an opportunity to volunteer. And then they're also hosting the Great American Cleanup. They have shared that if you want additional information regarding volunteering, to email them at COA, which is City of Allen, Waste Services at Allen IS. Oh, I'm sorry. That should be cityofallen.org. I'm going to have to fix that. I get used to doing Allen ISD. My bad. And then this one other opportunity, this is called Just Serve. I recently learned about this from Allen Ministerial Alliance, and they brought Just Serve out to talk to the local organizations. And this is a platform that connects individuals and organizations with volunteer opportunities. It's an app that you can put on your phone, And you can say, hey, I want to look to see what's going on in the community this Saturday. And you can see all the volunteer opportunities that have been added to the app. And so just a great opportunity to, again, connect, engage, support, build that, feeling of empathy, hopefully within our kids. I know it's something that we're continually trying to evolve, with in our own home. I think that sums it up. Yep.
Me again. I was just going to quickly wrap up with some practical strategies for parents. Set clear expectations, define responsibilities at home and in school. I don't know if you all have heard that clear is kind, and truly just defining what are the expectations, what are very clear expectations. Here is the rule. Make sure you're setting as specific as possible. And then provide guidance, not just rules. Explain why certain behaviors matter. So that kind of goes back to that clear is kind and setting those expectations. Also, explain the reasoning as to why. Again, when you have little ones and you're at an elementary level, hey, we don't do this, and that's the rule, and there's not a lot of questioning behind that. But we're starting to build questioners, and we want them to be questioners. We want them to kind of challenge a little bit and be challenging thinkers. But at the same time, when we're communicating on here's the rule, this is why. This is why you're having this rule. And allow some space for that questioning, allow some space for that dialogue so that there is some clear understanding. Encourage problem solving. Let students make decisions and learn from their own mistakes. This is a little bit one of those easier said than done, and it's very challenging, but allowing our students to make some mistakes and to learn from it. It's okay to fumble. How do we correct it? I always tell students it is absolutely okay for them to make mistakes. We want them to learn, but then how do we make it right? So allowing them to have the consequences, feel a little discomfort is fine. And then also, okay, how do we help make this right? And that also pushes them to have some ownership in their responsibility and how they can go about correcting it. And then recognize and reinforce positive behavior, praise responsibility and the ethical choices. It's as simple as like, hey, I know we had a rough morning, but I appreciate that you went to school and had a great day. Those little things. I know it feels like this age group is not listening, but they are listening. Their words matter. I'm sorry, your words matter. And so I'm gonna steal an example from someone just to kind of help tie it all together. But if you're having your student or your child turn in their cell phone at the end of the day, you're setting the clear expectation. Hey, you know what? At 9 o'clock, we're turning in cell phones and you need to put it in this basket. That's a very clear expectation. And then why? Well, because you don't need to be on your phone late at night. I'll tell you what, one of the things that our kids deal with that we didn't necessarily deal with is that social media is 24/7. And a lot of what our kids struggle with, a lot of their social interactions that may be negative, don't have a cutoff point because they have access to it through their phone 24/7. So maybe the reason is, you know what? One, you need to get some sleep. Two, it's time to set that boundary with friends and we need to cut it off. So 9 o'clock, you're putting your phone in the basket because we need to set that boundary. And then allow them to make that choice, right? It'd be very easy to say, hey, 9 o'clock, put it in my hand. But you can also say, hey, we have that basket. Your phone needs to be in that basket. And you're giving them that sense of responsibility to either make that choice to do the right thing or to make the choice to not do the right thing. And if they choose to hold on to their phone past the deadline, and past what you have made very clear about the expectations, then the consequences can come from that. And again, like I said, I know earlier in one of the other Raising Eagles, they talked about it's okay for you and your child to feel a little bit of that discomfort when it comes to those consequences and things like that. And so it's like, hey, you knew the expectation, you did not follow through with the expectation, and here's the consequence. So now I'm taking your phone for the whole day because you lost that privilege. You did not show me the responsibility and you did not meet the expectation. or even if they do turn in the phone, great. I appreciate you doing that. And I appreciate you following our rules and having those praise. So that was just an example that I think is very true to a lot of our families and how we're teaching and how we're communicating with our students, but just making sure that we're following through with setting the expectation, explaining why, and then allowing that room for choices. Because in a elementary setting, you are teaching your child right from wrong. In a middle school setting, they are choosing right from wrong. They already know, but they are choosing. And so a lot of times when they do choose to make the wrong choice, we have to follow through with, okay, now here are the consequences for that choice. But at the same time, when they are choosing to make the right choice, here are the positive consequences and the reinforcement for that positive choice.
All right, I guess it's my turn. You can keep it on that slide. Um, Man, I don't know how I follow that up. And you're wondering, what does a police officer have to do with any of this? So I've had 9 years of experience as a school resource officer. That included time as the elementary school resource officer, middle school, and the freshman level. And everything that Ashley and Gia have been saying is spot on when it comes to being engaged and being active. And when I do give these presentations, I know um, most of the time we come in with the mindset, okay, here I am as a parent. What is it that I can do for my child? And the best answer is model that behavior, which is what we started out with. Because if they're not going to admit to you that that they copy you, but they do. You're always going to be their first teacher, and whatever they see you do on a normal basis is what they is internally is going to feel is going to be important to them. So when we look at some of these activities that Ashley shared, as parents, we're often good at keeping up with the academic work. If they're in any kind of recreational stuff, whether it's sports or the arts, we're good at scheduling those things. But the environment of doing things for the community and volunteering um, exudes a different sense of pride in the city of Allen and the things that they're doing. And so it's important to schedule something that involves volunteering or just being in a different environment. I know last night I took my three younger boys to the school board meeting. That's like horrible environment for them, and it was much to my wife's chagrin that we would take them there because it's a very quiet place. My boys are 5, 4, and 2. But I thought, like I said, we do good with scheduling soccer and everything else, but they need to be in more structured environments where there's an expectation of being quiet, just so that they understand, hey, this is acceptable here, that's not acceptable there. And I think that's one thing a lot of our students are struggling with is what they feel is acceptable in small settings is just as acceptable in large settings. And that's a tough thing to teach. But the more we engage as parents in community events and different settings outside of just school, the better off they'll be. So the reason I want to make sure we all understand these police encounters is if we are keeping our kids busy, they won't ever have to deal with us. They won't be getting in trouble. And that's the same thing that I've seen with adults, right? The adults that are in and out of prison is because they lack activity, whether it's personal activity in their life or professional activity, where they are engaged and spending their time and energy in things that matter. And so you could go next slide. So the state made it a requirement, the graduation requirement that uh, they have some type of presentation from a police officer understanding police encounters. And I want to make sure as parents you understand part of what that presentation looks like. But more importantly, like I said, that as parents you understand the background of what police officers are doing, what's in their mindset when you do see a police officer somewhere, right? So community events, we love going to community events, being there, one, as a security measure, but more importantly, we get to engage in conversation. We get to have fun depending on what it is, right? It's low risk. Everybody wants to be there, right? Well, unless you're dragging your kid and your kid doesn't want to be at the event. But for the most part, everybody is there because they want to be there. So it's a positive atmosphere. And so as police officers, we're vigilant, making sure everything is safe. That's green. I'm using green, yellow, and red because we're all used to traffic lights, right? Patrolling. So if you see a police officer in a squad car or if they're on foot, um, they are there at the will and mercy of 911 calls or um, citizens walking up to them. And so there is a little more risk, right? Because it's a less controlled environment and we're constantly multitasking. So yeah, I've got a radio that I'm listening to. In the squad car, we have a map, so we see where all the officers are. If a 911 call pops up, it'll pop up on the map. If I'm assigned to it, then all the details will be there. I could look up prior history. So there's a lot of things going on inside a squad car. So unfortunately, one of the most vulnerable positions for a police officer to be in is in a police car, just because um, we're seat belted to the thing. It's hard to access any of our tools if someone does approach us that may be a threat. And so, anytime I caution anybody to just like suddenly knock on the window the, of a police vehicle without making sure you're at least visible prior to knocking on a window, just because that tends to startle us. But we are more vigilant in that aspect. Now, call response, 911 calls. That's when we have a disturbance that we're dispatched to theft, crash, assault, death investigation, or an active threat. And you see traffic stop is here in yellow and red. Traffic stops can go from yellow to red pretty quickly. And one thing a lot of students or even community members don't understand is there's nothing designating a car as a bad guy car or the person inside the car is armed. We don't know these things. They're complete strangers, right? And a lot of fatality police online on-duty deaths take place as a result of either a crash or somebody being armed. So it is higher risk. If someone's calling 911, that means something is out of order, something has gone wrong. So emotions are higher, and typically there's somebody there that doesn't want police to show up, right? Whether it's a victim or somebody that is involved in the crash and they were responsible for the crash. And so we are a little more hyper vigilant. So whenever you encounter a police officer in either of these, right, there's a different set of mindset, there's a different set of emotions at play, and we're expected to navigate those, throughout the day. So it's not uncommon for officers to be at a community event and then they get dispatched to something that would be red, right, where it's higher stress, and so our emotions are up and down throughout the day, and sometimes our professionalism tends to suffer, and that you know is key, and that's why a lot of departments are spending a lot of time on de-escalation techniques, understanding human emotion when it comes to dealing with community members, but more importantly, understanding your own human emotion as a caretaker of the community, as a police officer. You go to the next slide. All right, so the most encounter for most citizens would be a traffic stop. Not everyone calls 911. Hopefully, no one's ever a victim of whether it be theft or any kind of assault. But if we stop you, it's because we've witnessed something. We can't just, we see it all the time. Oh, that police officer stopped me for no reason. They may have stopped you for a silly reason, like you didn't turn on your blinker, but it's still a driving infraction. And when you do that, it does elicit emotional response, both for the police officer and the person being stopped. Nobody likes getting caught doing something they're not supposed to do, but you may not even know why you're getting stopped, right? So it's going to elicit some type of emotional response. And for us, again, the safety aspect of approaching a vehicle where you don't know who's in it or what's in the car, um, there is a bit of factor of anticipation or fear. If there's no suspicion, right, of additional criminal activity, you're either going to receive a warning, citation, and send you on your way. Sometimes this transitions to a pursuit. We activate our lights. Sometimes they'll pretend to slow down and then they take off running. Sometimes it's actually, we see this in the schools, where, a teacher or administrator may even address a kid about something that they're doing and they just completely shut down or they take off running. It's a fight or flight, right? So additional questioning may occur to determine if additional criminal activity has occurred. So when I was being trained as a young officer, one of the things that stuck with me about what we do in our line of work is we get paid to be nosy. Now, most people, citizens, will take offense to that because you're like, why are you digging into, you know, um, what's going on with me? And if we don't ask these questions, if we take everything at surface level, there's a lot of things that we will miss. The This uniform and the badge, unfortunately, attracts a lot of liars, and we don't know who's telling the lie and who's telling the truth because we have no personal relationship with the person that's in that car. We have no personal relationship with the person that's walking down the street. So if we stop you and ask you food questions and you tell us what you know to be the truth, it may take some time that we're going to have to verify that truth, or if we're observing mannerisms that are consistent with truth telling or not telling the truth. And so it's not because we want to offend you, it's because we don't know. And so, unfortunately, people do lie. And so when we're hearing a story from your everyday citizen who is telling the truth, sometimes we do question a little further because, again, you, the people that we do catch that are doing no good typically are not telling the truth. So you may be stopped on an investigative stop. So let's say someone calls 911, witnesses something that occurred, and they provide a vehicle description or a tire. Well, if they said it's a red four-door vehicle and it was traveling that way, when we show up, there's a chance that two or three red vehicles, four-door vehicles were traveling that way, and we may stop you because your vehicle matched the description. In those interactions, typically our officers are going to be short. They're going to just tell you the reason you were stopped was this, where are you coming from, where are you going, because they want to gauge whether or not you're the person that they need to talk to that's involved with it. So they will be short. They won't give you a whole lot of information because if you are that person, we don't need to be, divulging what their involvement is because we do need to figure out what they do know. So again, it'll be direct, short to determine, and go through the process of elimination. Now, and that we tell the kids this all the time, attitude can affect outcome, and that's same, for adults because the more confrontational or the more you don't answer questions, right? Then now that just raises suspicion in the officer's mind, and so um, and that could be as simple as a traffic stop and whether you do or don't get a ticket, right? Whether you get a verbal warning or you do get a citation. And a lot of people don't know this. So all traffic offenses are arrestable. So failure to signal lane change, you could be arrested for that. Your license plate light being out, you could be arrested for that. More 9 times out of 10, you won't be. It just ends up being a tool for finding other criminal activity. So here's an example. Citizen calls 911 11:30 at night because they witnessed a car in the back alley and it seems like they're stopping at every driveway. Provide a description of the car. Police officers show up, they locate that vehicle, but they're on a different street now. And we've got nothing to go on other than the description. Yeah, we could stop them and talk to them, and they say, "Oh, we live in the neighborhood. We were doing whatever." Well, we have nothing to keep them there, right? Well, if we follow that car and we realize, oh, their license plate light is out, now I've got a traffic violation that I can initiate contact, and when I make contact with them, and I can tell they're lying, and it looks like there's a lot of property in the trunk, they're not going to let me just search their car, right? If I arrest them for the license plate light being out, now I have to inventory their vehicle, and now I realize, oh, there's driver's license purses that belong to people on the other street, right? now that's become a tool of, again, um, uncovering other criminal activity. So more 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be arrested for failure to signal your lane change, but it is a tool for making contact and further detaining somebody that may be up to other um, crimes. The three that you cannot arrest for are speeding, open container, and texting while driving. The speeding, I understand because lots of people speed. Our jails would be full if we were able to arrest for speeding. However, there is a caveat to that. If it's reckless driving, that means you're speeding. Now there's unwanted regard for other safety because you're going in and out of lanes, stopping, going. So that's reckless driving. You could be arrested for reckless driving. Open container, that's an alcohol container. I think the reason behind that is because um, if we were to strictly arrest on open container and not fully investigate driving while intoxicated, then you wouldn't have to prove driving while intoxicated anymore. So you would have zero driving while intoxicated arrests, and you'll have an influx of open container arrests, which doesn't, the level of safety is not the same because you could, there are people that pop a drink on their way home and that's an open container, but they're not drunk and they're not intoxicated. So it's not the same level offense. And then texting while driving is not arrestable. It is ticketable um, also. And then next slide. So a few tips to aid in accountability and responsibility. We do want you reporting officers that do not conduct themselves professionally or do violate your rights. It keeps the profession honest. It keeps our community safer. And so anytime you have that, I know if you feel like you didn't deserve a ticket or you feel like they were unprofessional, obviously the tendency is to want to have that conversation right there with the officer. But uh, you have two people that are in emotional state that they don't want to hear the other person out. It's not going to accomplish much, and it tends to escalate the situation because then um, you get an officer safety issue or you get a ticket or an arrest that wasn't necessary because you have two parties that were in conflict. Best course of action is take it to the courts, report it to professional standards or internal affairs or the supervisor. Reporting, like I said, reporting bad conduct is good for the profession and good for the community. Lock up your valuables. I have to say this because a lot of times we do. That's probably one of our highest crimes in the city is burglarized motor vehicles. That means people are getting into your cars when it's parked, and again, 9 times out of 10, it's because they're not locked. And we are seeing more and more theft of firearms taking place out of vehicles that aren't locked. So, if you want to protect yourself, have a firearm in the vehicle, that's on you. But please make sure we are being responsible and taking those with you into the home and locking those up and not allowing criminals to have more access. So, a lot of our juveniles that we're finding that do have firearms, they come from being stolen out of vehicles. And then provide good descriptors. The more descriptive you are, the less people we have to stop that are the wrong people. And it allows us to actually take action on criminals because you provided good description of license plate, direction of travel, what they were wearing, and make and model. Because we are a heavily populated city. It's not what it once was, and we have lots of people traveling with 75 and 121. A lot of the people committing crime aren't from Allen, and so they come here because they know we have things and they want them, so they take them. All right, next slide. All right, I had to throw this in here because when we talk about being engaged, right? Being an engaged citizen is no different than being an engaged student. First part to being engaged is showing up, right? You got to be present. You got to be there. You got to have attendance. Second portion is your participation. You got to be actively doing something, right? Are you taking part in conversations? Are you taking part in discussions? Are you voting? Are you doing surveys? Are you volunteering? The third part is obviously the knowledge or awareness that each of us develop by being engaged. But the fourth part that determines whether or not any of this sticks or how you react or if your conversations are productive is addressing the emotion aspect of it. And that's why we're seeing a lot of this in the schools, but we're also seeing it now in professions such as mine, where we have to take into account um, officers' emotions as well as community members' emotions, because we could learn all we want, but if we don't understand that my emotion is going to run to this decision and you're not able to regulate or navigate that, um, then that knowledge is useless, right? So we are, a lot of our behavior is a product of what we're feeling at the time we're feeling it and understanding how to navigate that. So next slide, please. So when you talk about literacy, it's being able to identify the feelings that we're feeling and the cause of it. Intelligence takes that deeper in understanding, okay, how do I regulate that? Why is it happening? And then understand how to use that in a community setting with the other people around. And so we struggle to teach at a young age because as kids, right, we're just emotional. We don't have a lot of life experience. We don't have a lot of wisdom. We don't have a lot of tools in the tool belt to regulate our emotions. And we build on that. And we, as adults, again, need to model that same behavior. Whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it's legislation and schools, we have to have these conversations, but whether or not they're responsible or healthy determines on how well each of us are engaged with emotional intelligence. For some reason in our society today, everything is got to be one of two poles, right? You can't have two things be true at the same time, or you're wrong. Everything has to be on an extreme, and that just does not make sense. But the reason that is because we are now engaging so much emotion. And it's one thing to be passionate about something, but if you're so passionate that logic is now out the window because you're strictly having conversations based on emotion. I mean, I think all of us can go on Facebook right now and look up school choice or anything going on politically, and you're going to get both poles, and you could have people name calling, you could have people um, tearing down the other person's viewpoint without considering the weaknesses in their own viewpoint. And there's not a lot of responsibility taking place. And that's the difference between just being engaged and actually being responsible and engaged is, you know, how can you have collaboration if no one's willing to listen or we're tearing each other down? And so that's the hard part when it comes to teaching kids, but it trickles into adulthood as well. And I'm sure you see that. So if you look at this wheel regarding emotional literacy and emotional intelligence, this is something I really learned when I'm one of the police department's crisis negotiators. And I decided to do that after I started with the schools because I deal with a lot of people in crisis, kids, right? And when adults are in crisis, it's very similar. They are catering to their emotions, not to what they know, and we have to balance those two things out. And the only way you balance these things out is having more encounters, right? Having more engagements, and that's why this is great that we have Ashley and Gia here sharing the different things that we need to be doing. And being a parent is hard. Being an adult is hard. It's not one-sided. It's not just one thing that's going to make it successful. It's a multitude of practices, a multitude of collaborations, a multitude of relationships that's going to allow us to succeed. That's why our police department. I don't know if you saw, we're breaking ground. Well, we broke ground yesterday on a new police department. What does that mean? To me, as a police officer, it means that community supports me. It means that as a department, we are doing things in the community outside of just arresting people. We have SROs that are engaged I encourage many of you to attend the Citizens Police Academy that takes place. It's much like the Junior Police Academy. If any of your kids have gone to that, you get to see the different aspects of the department and how they function, why they do what they do, we say what we say, and things of that nature. But it we've got so many things going on in Allen. We have homes, we have businesses, we have the schools, but I think you being here, understanding that it's a good place to work and live is a product of people that are responsible and engaged, and we just need to keep that going. And the hardest step is step one, right? Whether that's in weight loss, whether it's making some sort of change, the hardest step is taking that first step. And so if you haven't taken that first step in doing something in the community with your kids, I encourage you to do so because busy kids, active parents is ultimately safer for us as a community as well. Next slide. I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I think we have some questions in the chat in the Q&A. I'm gonna let Christy share those.
Let's see here. I thought if you were driving excessively fast, you could be arrested.
So yeah, so speed, excessively fast, right? That's relative. What you may think is excessively fast and what I think is excessively fast is relative. So yeah, if you're going, 80, 90 miles in a 40, then that, you're not getting arrested for speeding. You're now reckless because you're disregarding a lot of all the people traveling around you. Are you able at 90 miles an hour in a 40 slam on the brakes for pedestrian? There are things that that go into it. So you would not be arrested slowly for speeding. You'd be arrested for reckless driving. So if you're going 10 or 15 over and you're not weaving it in and out, you're strictly speeding, you could be issued a citation for speeding, but not arrested for speeding. Good question.
Okay, next question. What would be good tips to help teenagers go from high school to college? They won't have us reminding them and keeping them on track for organization and discipline. Do we just let them entirely free to make mistakes and learn from them, which I understand they need to learn how to do in order to problem solve? Currently, we keep track on schedules and events, and it can get overwhelming. How to make sure the kids remain and learn to be even more organized and responsible once they go off to college without parents being a human calendar reminder for them on many times. Is the information on how to properly handle a police stop discussed as a part of driver course? Thank you to all the presenters. Very informative.
Okay, yes. We do discuss the proper way to file a complaint and handle that on the police side. I'll let Gia answer the other piece, but just from my perspective, again, it goes back to shared responsibility in everything that you do. That includes your schedule, your calendar, like these volunteer events, right? The difference between a parent that actually does volunteer work and does it with their kid versus the parent dropping them off for volunteer work is going to be different, right? So again, we want to think of the things that our kids need, but don't want to do it for them. We want to be able to do it alongside them. And I think the more we do that in every aspect of day-to-day life, that will tend to stick with them once they go to college. But yes, they are going to make mistakes. They are going to sleep in. They are going to miss a test. They are going to, it's going to happen. But I think when we talk about trying to teach our kids and even us as adults how we engage with people outside of just our household, I feel like we need to treat everything like it's an interview for the job that we want so bad, right? And if you do that, the language you use, the timeliness of the things that you do, right? whether it's school or sports, athletics, recreational stuff. If you come in with that professionalism, hey, I'm interviewing right now for the job that I want, I think you're going to make the right decision. But I'll leave GF. She's got some good tips regarding that.
I would definitely, I mean, everything that Sergeant Centeno said as far as like we do have to allow them to sleep through that test or maybe miss that thing because again, there is that ownership of, okay, you know what, this is my college experience. I want to get the grades out of it that I want. And so this is what I have to do to get there. But I also think it's important to come from a perspective of goal setting. So having those goals with your college student and then revisiting those goals because that's an easier way to say, hey, you know, you told me that you had a goal of passing biology class. How is that going? What are you doing to reach that goal? And allowing those critical thinking skills to kind of play a role when you're saying, okay, so are you going to the study groups? Are you able to time manage? A lot of times, some of those conversations are, do you need to take a step back? If you're telling me that this is your goal and this is what you're wanting to get out of college, then hey, maybe ultimate frisbee is taking too much time. How do we reevaluate what so we can help you reach your goal? So you're kind of coming at it from that perspective of giving them that freedom and allowing them to make those choices, but at the same time saying this is the ultimate goal that you set. This is the expectation you set for yourself. And are we doing the things to get there? But again, I think this is why this is an important conversation. Why we are raising eagles so that they can soar when it's time to leave the nest. So having some of those things, even in that senior year, kind of pulling back a little bit and saying, okay, I've been your calendar keeper. It's your turn. Let's get through these next, 6 weeks even, kind of set that timeline and take a little chunk. Like, you know what? The third quarter is on you, friend. So let's figure out how we're going to do that. And then at the end of that, what we learn? How was it? Hey, you didn't get that grade that you thought you were going to get. And let's talk about that. Or you didn't make the event that you thought you were going to make, or you had to cancel on some people and you weren't able to follow through on the commitment. How do we revisit that? But I think kind of letting them spread their wings a little bit sooner before we're going out can also help too, because that's where you can offer some feedback and that's where you can also model some behavior.
Right. I'm going to piggyback on what you just said because as y'all know, I have a 16-year-old as of today. And so he's going to be driving soon. And he also plays football at Allen High School. And so he generally sets an alarm for himself. Sometimes he has to be there at 5:45 in the morning for football practice. Sometimes it's 6:30. Sometimes it's 8. It kind of varies. So starting when he got on the football team as a sophomore, I was like, okay, you got to keep up with that schedule. So that was kind of the initial piece of you've got to keep up the schedule. I'm not looking to see what time you're supposed to be there. That's on you. And so next is you set your own alarm. You get yourself up. I'm going to get up because I have to take you, but I'm essentially coming in to make sure that you're up. Most of the time he's up. Sometimes he's not. Sometimes it's then me saying, hey, it's time to go. Let's go. What's going to happen next is he's going to have to set his alarm. He's going to have to get up. Mom's not taking him. Mom's not going to check to see if he actually got up. There will be a day where he does not get up and he goes in late to football practice and he's going to have to run however many bleachers to make up for the time that he has missed. And he won't do that again. He will figure out setting multiple alarms or whatever it is, but he will make sure that doesn't happen again because he will have learned from that experience. I, as a parent, I'm gonna say it right now. When you've experienced things where you're like, oh my gosh, I felt so bad because I wasn't there on time, and you know that anxiety and how it feels. You don't want your kid to feel that. But what other presenters have shared, people with years and years of knowledge, counseling degrees, psychologists, all these things, what they have shared from each session, they have said, let your child fail. It is important for them to feel those emotions, because it opens up different pathways in their brains to help them deal with difficult situations. And so that to me has been incredibly difficult up until a point to where now I'm like, okay, this is actually good for them. Like, I'm kind of excited that he screwed up under my roof because I'm here to now support him, right? Versus him going off to college and, not waking up for a final that then he's then going to flunk that class. Like, I'd rather him to learn now. So yes, let them fail now while they're under your roof. But okay, I don't see any other questions. If y'all have any questions, let us know. We will share this recording and this presentation within the next couple of days. Okay. Thank you guys so much for it. Oh, I almost forgot. Let me put let me share my other screen again because I have where is it? Nope, that's not it. Let me find my, what am I trying to say? I have a link for you to complete to be entered into a drawing for a book. And I'm just going to throw the link into the chat. I think that'll be easier. There we go. Okay, if you guys are interested in getting a copy of Ron Ferguson's How to Raise Highly Successful Children, complete that form and you'll be entered into the prize drawing. All right, I'll stay on for just a couple of seconds so you guys can grab that link. But that's it for today. Thank you guys for joining us.